Hi, this is Andrea Kane, and I'm here with you for HIT 452 Statistics and Data Analysis. We are moving on to week number 2, and this week we actually start getting into formulas. We're going to start with Chapter 3 on patient census. If you are looking at your syllabus, you will see that we will be focusing on unit objectives 9.2.1 through 9.2.9. All right, so let's get started. If you want to open up your not your workbook, your textbook. I mean, I guess you could call it a workbook because it does have some exercises in it that you can do to practice. But it is really the textbook on page 31. Hopefully you've read through this material already so it's not cold, but if it is, we'll work through it together. It'll be all right. It just sometimes helps to read through it before you start listening to me and whatever it is that I'm trying to share. Hopefully it doesn't make it more confusing, it makes it less. That's what I'm trying to do. There's some learning objectives here that you can see. We're really going to be focusing in on census and inpatient service days. Those are kind of the major areas that we're going to talk about. We will get into the different types of census activities that are done, the service days, whether you're taking inpatient service days or total inpatient service days, that type of thing, and how all that works. All right, inpatient census. This indicates the number of patients present in the healthcare facility at a particular point in time. A couple things you need to know. Most organizations do this at midnight. That's when they usually take their census. Is at midnight or 12:01. That is consistent across healthcare organizations. Not really sure why they do that. It's just the way that they've always done it for so many years, and it works well and it's consistent, so it happens. Second thing you need to notice about inpatient census is the word inpatient. It only includes inpatients, not observation patients. So if you have observation patients and they are in the hospital overnight, they are not counted in the inpatient census. Please make sure you take note of that. Each patient care unit also reports the number of patients that they have admitted, discharged, or transferred in or out that day. And that's commonly called the ADT system, admissions, discharges, and transfers. Now, for the purposes of our discussion, anytime you see the word transferred, I want you to think of a patient that has moved from the ICU to a med-surg floor or from a med-surg floor to the ICU. This is not transfer outside of the facility. If it's a transfer outside of the facility, it is a discharge. Okay? So keep that in mind. This information then is combined to get that census of an entire facility. It's all done electronically these days, and that sort of thing. Daily inpatient census. This is the number of inpatients present on the patient care unit at the census taking time each day, and any inpatients that were both admitted after census taking time and discharged before the next census taking time. So let's unpack that with an example. If you turn to page 33 in your book, there is example, not exercise, example 3.1. It says the number of patients in General Hospital at midnight on May 1st is 230. 2 patients are admitted during the day. 40 patients are discharged. What is the inpatient census at the end of the day on the next day, which would be May 2nd? All right, so let's take a look at the screen here. You have 230 patients at midnight. During the next day, you have 2 patients that are admitted, but not discharged the same day. You have 40 patients that are discharged, but not admitted the same day, because if they're admitted and discharged on the same day, guess what? You don't count them. We do not include patients admitted and discharged on the same day when you are counting up the census. Whoops. Let me go back. Come back here, little mouse. My mouse gets a little excited here, just like I do. So let's tally this up. 230 plus 2. See, 230 plus 2 is 232. 232 minus 40 because you had discharged them. Remember, you gained 2 when they were admitted, but you lost 40 because they were discharged. So you subtract the 40 and that gives you 192. So your inpatient census is 192. Now let's play the game of what if these two that were admitted were actually admitted and discharged on the same day? Well, we just talked about the fact you don't include those patients. So in this scenario, you would have 232, but you would totally ignore this 2, and you would have 230. 230 minus 40 is 190. Okay, do you see the difference? If they're admitted and discharged on the same day, you do not count them. If they are admitted but not discharged on the same day, you do. And the same thing here. We would not we could not count these 40 to subtract them out if they were admitted and discharged on the same day. They have to be discharged but not admitted that same day. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's move on to inpatient service day. This is a unit of measure that denotes the services received by one inpatient in a 24-hour period. This is the time between the census taking hours on 2 consecutive days, meaning that this is what happens from 12:01 a.m. on May 1st until you get to 11:59 that night. It's that 24-hour period. We reach that 12:01 on May 2nd. One inpatient service day is counted for each inpatient admission when the patient is admitted and discharged the same day. So this is different. Inpatient service days are different than census because they do count patients who are admitted and discharged the same day, and they give them one service day in recognition of that. So we talked about the fact that a service day is not usually divided or reported as a fraction. It's almost always a whole number. So when you're calculating out inpatient service day, they should tell you to give a whole number, but if they don't, please keep that in mind. It should be a whole number. Just like census has to be a whole number, inpatient service day should be a whole number. The day of admission is counted as an inpatient service day, but the day of discharge is not. That is an important thing to know when you're talking inpatient service day. The day of discharge doesn't get counted. If they're on a leave of absence, again, they aren't counted. And you calculate adults and children always separately from newborns or bassinets. Adults and children, that's adults and pediatrics, not newborns. So remember that too. Unfortunately, people call inpatient service days by other names. They can call it patient day, an inpatient day, a bed occupancy day, a census day. Why they can't just stick with inpatient service day, I don't know, but this would be a good flashcard opportunity so you can at least recognize those other names. The sum of all the inpatient service days in a period of time is a total inpatient service day count, okay? So let's say you're not just looking at one day of inpatient service days, you're looking at a week or a month. How do you do that? All right, so we're going to calculate out inpatient service days together. And an inpatient service day, remember, is a 24-hour period. It includes patients that were admitted and discharged on the same day, and the day of admission is counted, but not the day of discharge. So if you go to your book, page 37, there is, where is it? Oh, it's table 3.1 toward the bottom. And this is what I'm going to walk through with you. They tell you you have 257 patients at midnight. This is where you're starting from. And I would encourage you, when I do these, I have to give myself notes. So even if you have a problem on paper or you're starting to calculate it out electronically, for me, I put in these little notes for myself so I remember what in the world I'm doing. All right, so I'm starting with 257 patients. There were 45 that were admitted, so I've got to add those, and that's where you get 257 plus 45 equals 302. That's right there. Now I have 24 discharges. Well, what do I do with discharges? I subtract those. So 302 minus 24 is 278. Now I've got these 4 inpatients that were admitted and discharged the same day. Guess what? Remember, we count those and they each get the number of 1. So I've got 4, so I add 4. 278 plus 4 is 282. So for this example, we started with 257, we end with 282. Excuse me, 282. And that's how we got there. So I guess if I could give you advice, and again, this really comes down to you and how you learn best and how you are most comfortable doing math and calculations and formulas. I have to make myself comments. I have to write stuff down. So for me, putting in words like start, add, subtract, add, it just helps me. But if it doesn't help you to do your math as you go along, then don't worry about it. You do it how it works for you. I'm just giving you some examples of things that have helped me. You do what's best for you because I want you to succeed. That's what this is all about. It's not about how Andrea does math, because heaven help us if it is. You may find some of my errors before we get through with all this. All right, so transfer, we talked about this. It's only intra within the facility. And unless you're having to do inpatient service days on a specific unit, you won't have to bother with transfers. If we're talking outside of the facility, you're including those outside of the facility transfers and deaths in with discharge. Discharge is that big lump of category of they've left the building, whether they've left it alive or deceased or transferred out, they're all under that discharge umbrella. Patients admitted and discharged on the same day. Again, don't you wish they just refer to it as patients admitted and discharged on the same day, rather than saying, oh, they're an I&O or an A&D. Remember, they are counted in inpatient service days, but they are not counted in inpatient census. So again, so much of this is going to go back to you knowing the formulas and what is included in each one. Based on their definitions. So when it comes to inpatient census, you don't include patients that were admitted and discharged on the same day. But when it comes to inpatient service days, you've got to. All right, so let's talk through average daily inpatient census, the formula. Make sure you know this formula. It is total inpatient service days over the days in the period. Now notice something here. I want to point it out to you. It excludes newborns. So if we look at example 3.5 on page 43. So if you flip in your book to page 43, you'll see that example. It's towards the bottom of the page. It says there are 6,653 inpatient service days for adults and children. Okay? It says there were 155 inpatient service days for newborns. So do you include or exclude? Are you calculating newborns? What does your formula say? Are you including newborns or excluding them? You're excluding them. So immediately you can just kind of mentally draw a big, thick black line through this and say, I don't have to consider this piece of information. It's in the problem and it's there to distract me, but I don't need it. Now they tell you that they're looking at these service days in the month of May. How many days are in the month of May? 29, 30, 31? It's 31. Make sure you know that. So looking at your formula, what's your total inpatient service days? It's 6653. What are your total number of days in the period? 31. 6653 divided by 31 is 214.61. Well, what did we say about this? They're looking for whole numbers. They're not looking for this point whatever. They're looking for whole numbers. So we've got to round it. Do we round up or do we round down? Well, after the decimal point, it's a 6. Is 6 up or down? 6 is 5 and above, so it's going to go up to 215. So the correct answer is 215. Okay, do you see how I got there? Adult children's service days divided by the number of days in the period, which they told us was May, which is 31 days, gives us our number, and then we have to make sure we round it to a whole number. All right, what about those newborns? Let's say now they're asking us to use the same information, but now they want to know about newborns. So what about this 6653? Do we include it or exclude it? It only says newborns there. It doesn't say anything about adults and children, so we exclude it. So this time around, sorry, my mouse is excited. This time around, mark a big dark mark through here. Blue, brown, purple, whatever color you want to. Just mark it through mentally. You are not going to use that number. Okay, so you've got 155 inpatient service days for newborns. Okay, that's what's going to be your numerator. What are you going to divide it by? It's that month of May that has 31 days. So 155 divided by 31 is 5. And again, you want a whole number, and thankfully it came right out for that for you, so it's just 5. It's not a big deal. You got it. But you have to know what are they asking and what's the formula to know how to do these. I would really strongly suggest that you work through as many of these exercises as possible. And especially the odd number ones, because in the back of your book, there is a section that is answers to odd numbered chapter exercises. Do those, please. It will help you so much when you get to the quiz. Make yourself flashcards of these formulas. Make sure you understand census doesn't include same day admits and discharges, but inpatient service days do. This is just a formula review. It's the last slide in the deck, I believe, for this time around. It's trying to tell you what the indicator is and what's on the numerator and what's on the denominator. To me, personally, I prefer formulas like this. It helps me more than seeing a table like this. This more confuses me. This is something I can understand. But it really depends on your learning style and what works for you. So if you're a table person, do a table. If you're a formula person, do a formula. Just make sure that you know what these formulas are and how to use them and what goes into them. That is my advice. All right, take care. Have a fabulous week 2. We will be back again to talk week 3 because we are moving on to occupancy rates. Exciting stuff, you know. All right, take care.